Imagine yourself on a battlefield. The earth beneath your feet trembles with the impact of each step. The sound of weapons and screams echo around you. In front of you rises an imposing wall, its gates closed, with the defenders ready to repel any invader. You are surrounded by your companions, some trembling with fear, others awaiting command. And then a fateful decision arises. Advance to your death or be the first to scale that wall. There are no guarantees there. You will be the target of arrows, stones, boiling oil, and, if you're lucky, a well-aimed blow that will mark the end of your life. Being the first to scale a wall during a siege was not just an act of bravery, but a passport to glory. An action capable of guaranteeing eternal honor, material rewards, and an ascension that could change an entire life. Soldier to take such risks? What motivated men to risk themselves in battles where death was closer than life? Today, we will discover what really drove these warriors to defy the walls on the battlefield. Sieges were, without a doubt, some of the most dramatic and dangerous moments of antiquity and the Middle Ages. When an army surrounded a city, it was not just a military confrontation. It was a battle of intelligence, patience, and resistance. Entire cities they were preparing to resist not only the attack, but the continuous blockade, a war of attrition. Many sieges lasted months, even years, and each day that passed meant more tension, more shortages, and finally, more hopelessness for the people. Attackers, the fight was not just to invade. The real battle was to win the honor of being the first to break down a city's defenses. The siege, however, was not just an artillery war. When a city's walls were the last obstacle between victory and defeat, scaling those walls was more than a matter of strength. It was an act of faith, a demonstration of pure courage. The soldiers faced a relentless scenario: the risk of being hit by poisoned arrows, boiling oil bombs, or stones thrown from the heights. Even so, the idea of being the first to reach the top of the wall, cross the lines, defense, an open path to the attacking army became an irresistible desire. Was there a reward for the soldier who stood out in this moment of extreme violence? Coronation with the Corona Muralis, the mural crown, one of the highest honors granted in ancient Rome. More than a simple award, the Corona Muralis signified a special place in history. It was the promise of eternal recognition, material rewards, and, often, advancement in the military and political hierarchy. The glory achieved on the walls, then, was an open door to a future of great prestige. Now, let's look at a fascinating, historic example of how these battles played out. An example of audacious military tactics and extraordinary courage, where soldiers not only fought for an ideal, but also for a future in which their name would be remembered for generations. Let's talk about Novo Cartago. In 209 BC, during the Second Punic War, the Roman general Scipio Africanus faced one of the greatest challenges of his career. His objective? Capturing New Carthage, the main Carthaginian city on the Iberian Peninsula. The city was heavily defended, with very high walls and a garrison determined to resist at any cost. But Scipio, a brilliant strategist, knew that brute force alone would not be enough. Skill, perfect timing, and, of course, the courage of his soldiers. The city of Novo Cartago was not just a military fortress, but a crucial point for controlling the region. When Scipio began the siege, he already knew that he could not win immediately. The Carthaginians' resistance was fierce, and the terrain was difficult, made any advance a nightmare. But Scipio did not give up. On December 23, 209 BC, he reorganized his forces and attacked again, this time with a bold and unexpected strategy. As the battle raged on the eastern and southern fronts of the city, Scipio sent a secret party of 500 men to cross the lagoon to the north, an area neglected by the Carthaginian defenders. They approached the wall undetected. Night fell, and tension was at its height. Then, in an almost suicidal move, these soldiers scaled the city walls, facing a hail of arrows and direct attacks. They reached the top, opened the gates, and allowed the rest of the forces in. Romans invaded the city. However, the conquest of New Carthage was not just about military strategy. When the Romans took the city, two soldiers, Quintus Trebellius and Sextus Digitus, both claimed to be the first to scale the wall. The confrontation between the two heroes almost came to an open fight between their units. But Scipio, with the cunning that characterized him, intervened in a surprising way. Instead of choosing between the two, he decided to award both with the Corona Muralis, recognizing that the bravery demonstrated by both deserved equal honor. What does this story teach us? That the search for honor and glory, like that of the soldiers who climbed the walls of New Carthage, was much more than a matter of courage. It was a search for a place in history, a desire to eternity. But would this be just about courage? Or could there be a social, psychological, and even political component behind this desire for conquest? What makes a man volunteer to climb a wall under a hail of arrows, aware that death awaits him at every moment? The answer lies in a complex intertwining of personal, social, and cultural factors that motivated these soldiers to take risks in search of honor and glory. In ancient Rome, the pursuit of virtus, an ideal of courage, honor, and excellence, was the central force that drove these men. Roman society was structured around a rigid hierarchy, where social position was largely defined for a man's deeds on the battlefield. For the Romans, virtus was more than an attribute. It was the main measure of a citizen's worth. It was one of the greatest legacies that a Roman could leave. However, the motivation of soldiers was not just a quest for individual glory. There was also the pressure of society and comradeship. In Roman armies, loyalty to the commander and comrades was fundamental. The unity of soldiers, often recruited from different classes, casualties, or commoners, had a deep sense of belonging and mutual trust. Risking your life to climb a wall was not just an act of personal courage, but a proof of loyalty to those at your side, to your ability to honor your companions and face challenges together. And, of course, there was the material factor. For many, especially lower-class soldiers, the battlefield represented the only opportunity for social advancement. The conquest of a city brought not only riches, in the form of loot, land, and awards, but also a prestige that could transform the life of a man and his family. The honor achieved on the walls of a fortress could be the passport to a life of wealth and respect, something that many commoner soldiers deeply desired. Scaling a wall during a siege was, without a doubt, one of the riskiest and deadliest tasks a soldier could face. From the moment the soldier approached the wall, he knew his life was at stake. The open field and towards the walls was a scene of pure mortality. Sharp arrows flying through the air, rocks falling from the heights, and the desperate screams of companions falling alongside. The risk of being hit was almost certain. The climb itself was no less deadly. The walls were protected by soldiers armed to the teeth, ready to repel the invaders in any way possible. Boiling oil, huge stones, and spears were mercilessly thrown at the soldiers who tried to climb. Rarely, defenders would knock down ladders or destroy siege towers, causing dozens of men to fall from great heights, resulting in brutal deaths. And even if the soldier managed to reach the top of the wall, that did not mean safety. At the top, the defenders were ready to face them. A soldier, no matter how brave, often found himself alone or with a small number of allies, facing a multitude of enemies. The fight on top of the walls, without the possibility of immediate reinforcements, required not only courage, but unusual physical and mental resistance. The simple fact of reaching the top was just the beginning, a new fight for survival. With the fall of the Roman Empire, battles and sieges continued to be an essential part of military history, but the cultural context and motivations began to change. In the Middle Ages, the concept of heroism and glory adapted to the new social landscape and religious. Now, the main motivation for climbing the walls of a fortress was no longer the search for Corona Muralis, but the possibility of social and political ascension through the test of courage. During the Middle Ages, being the first to conquer a wall did not just mean personal glory. The knight or soldier who distinguished himself in combat could be awarded lands, titles of nobility, and in some cases a high status at court. The promise of riches and social prestige played a key role in motivating many men who risked their lives to climb the walls of fortified castles. Furthermore, the Crusades, which dominated much of the Middle Ages, brought a new layer of motivation. For many Christian soldiers, the conquest of Muslim lands was not just a matter of secular honor, but of faith. The promise of spiritual indulgences, the forgiveness of sins, and the guarantee of salvation was a powerful incentive for those who faced the horrors of battle, especially those who risked their lives climbing the walls of castles or fortresses. Thus, although the spirit of bravery and the quest for glory continued to exist, in the Middle Ages heroism was intertwined with the desire for social recognition and spiritual rewards. The quest for honor was now closely linked to the status of nobility, to religious faith, and to fight for a greater cause. The stories of the soldiers who scaled the walls during the sieges of antiquity and the Middle Ages reveal not only the brutality of the battles, but also the complex human motivations that drove these men to face extreme risks. On the one hand, there was the quest for glory, the desire to be remembered as a hero, a figure immortalized by the courage demonstrated. But alongside this, there was the search for social advancement, the promise of material rewards, and in the Middle Ages, the promise of a guaranteed place in heaven. These men, often from humble social classes, saw in the walls of a besieged city a unique opportunity to transform their lives. Being remembered in history or rewarded with land and riches was a way of achieving what previously seemed impossible. However, the stories of these soldiers also invite us to reflect on what was going through their minds. Were they driven by true honor and virtue? Or were there, behind their courage, social pressure, the psychology of fear of dishonor, and the strength of a culture that exalted heroism as an unquestionable value? Today, in the modern world, the concept of heroism has changed. Battles are no longer fought on fortress walls, but in other arenas. However, the courage of our ancestors continues to inspire us. These soldiers remind us that, in moments of crisis, we are capable of extraordinary feats. And more than that, they invite us to question, what is the true meaning of heroism in today's times? Do we celebrate bravery, sacrifice, and honor as before, or our own? Do glories manifest themselves in different ways? In the end, the story of these soldiers continues to teach us about human motivations, about the search for a legacy that transcends time and inspires future generations.